In the heart of the desert, where the wind whispered ancient secrets and the sands hid forgotten tales, there stood a village draped in silence. The small settlement, weathered by time, was known for one thing above all: the legend of Zahra, the Arabian steed cursed by fate itself. No one dared to approach her. Zahra was a creature of myth, feared and revered in equal measure. Her coat, dark as midnight, shimmered under the harsh desert sun, and her eyes, glowing with an unsettling intelligence, seemed to pierce the very soul of those who looked upon her. She had been the prized steed of the tribe's leader, a noble gift from a faraway king. But betrayal, treachery, and a kingdom's wrath had altered her destiny forever. For years, the villagers had whispered of her curse, the kind of curse that would bring death and despair to any man foolish enough to try to tame her. Many had come, drawn by the stories of her unmatched beauty and strength, but none had returned whole. Some left with shattered bones, others with broken spirits. The elders warned of the curse. Zahra was not merely a horse, but a force of nature, bound by an ancient magic, keeping her at the edge of the living world and the realm of the unseen. The villagers spoke of strange events: sudden, violent storms, crops wilting, and even the land itself shifting its form whenever someone attempted to claim Zahra as their own. Yet the stories never lost their allure. Zahra was a symbol of both temptation and doom, her legend stretching across generations like the very desert that encircled the village. Some believed Zahra was not a horse at all, but a spirit of vengeance forever bound to the land, and forever untamable. The wind howled through the village like a restless spirit as a lone figure appeared on the horizon, framed by the burning golden sun. Rashid, a man whose past was etched in scars and memories, had arrived. His steps were measured, deliberate, his weathered face set in a quiet resolve. A former soldier and horse whisperer, Rashid had traveled far across the desert in search of something, or perhaps someone. His journey had taken him through endless dunes and scorching heat, but it was the whispers of Zahra, the cursed Arabian steed, that had drawn him to this forgotten corner of the world. The stories of the wild, untamable horse intrigued him, not as a challenge, but as a puzzle. Rashid had encountered many horses in his life, each with their own stories, temperaments, and secrets. But Zahra's legend was different, haunted by an ancient curse, said to possess powers beyond understanding. As he entered the village, the elders looked upon him with suspicion, their eyes wary of yet another outsider who would fall prey to Zahra's curse. The villagers muttered under their breath, exchanging knowing glances. "He is no different from the others," they said. "Another fool seeking glory in the face of certain doom." But Rashid was not like the others. His gaze, sharp and steady, met the stares of the villagers without flinching. He had seen the darkest corners of the world and fought battles that had tested his very soul. He had nothing to prove to them. What intrigued him wasn't Zahra's fearsome reputation, but the possibility that she, like any creature, was bound by something more profound than just a curse. There was more to her than the legends told, and Rashid was determined to uncover it. The village elder, a man bent with age and burdened by secrets, approached him cautiously. "Do you know what you seek here?" the elder asked, his voice trembling with the weight of generations. Rashid nodded, his lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "I seek nothing but truth," he replied, his voice calm but resolute. "And perhaps redemption." The elder watched him for a long moment, his eyes clouded with doubt, before speaking again. "Then you are a fool, like all the rest. Zahra does not belong to the living world anymore. She is a curse, and she will bring ruin to all who try to tame her." Rashid didn't respond. Instead, he turned toward the stable where Zahra was kept, his every step seeming to echo with purpose. As the villagers watched in silence, a chill ran through the air. Rashid had come, and no one knew whether he would break the curse, or become its next victim. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows over the village, when Rashid made his way toward the stable where Zahra was kept. The villagers gathered in the distance, their eyes narrowed with a mixture of curiosity and dread. They had seen many come before him, each one bold, determined, and certain that they could break Zahra's curse. And each had failed, leaving nothing but broken pride and shattered bones in their wake. But Rashid was different. There was no boastful confidence in his stride, no false bravado. He moved with a calm purpose, his every step deliberate and measured, as though he were walking toward something he knew he would eventually meet. As he approached the stable, the air seemed to thicken, heavy with the weight of unspoken fear and the lingering scent of dust and horse. The stable door creaked as he pushed it open, and the first thing he saw was her, Zahra, standing in the dim light, her silhouette framed by the flickering shadows of the setting sun. Her dark coat shimmered like liquid velvet, and her piercing eyes, glowing with a fierce intelligence, locked onto him the moment he stepped inside. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Zahra stood still, her muscles tense, but she did not rear or lunge as the villagers had predicted. Instead, she simply watched him. Her gaze was unnerving, as if she could see through the layers of his skin and into the very heart of him. It was said that Zahra had a way of knowing a person's soul, its deepest fears, its hidden desires. And she had never once allowed a man to approach her without causing harm. But Rashid was no ordinary man. He stood still for a long while, making no move to advance, his eyes locked with hers. The villagers were silent now, unsure of what to make of this strange encounter. Rashid had not spoken, nor had he made any attempt to exert his presence. It was as if he were waiting for something. After several moments, he spoke, softly, almost to himself, but loud enough for the horse to hear. "I do not wish to tame you, Zahra. I only wish to understand you." The words hung in the air like a challenge, but also an invitation not for control, but for trust. The villagers, watching from the shadows, murmured in disbelief. No one had ever spoken to Zahra that way. They were used to commands, threats, and even bribes. But never this kind of calm, respectful approach. It was as though Rashid had spoken to the horse's very soul, addressing her as an equal, not an object to be conquered. Zahra's ears twitched, her nostrils flaring as she took a step toward him. The air around them seemed to pulse with energy, a silent understanding passing between them. She could feel it, the shift. Rashid was not like the others. He was not here to break her, to bend her to his will. He was here to listen. Rashid took a single, deliberate step forward. His movements were slow, fluid, never quick enough to provoke fear. He extended his hand toward her, fingers outstretched but never touching. The villagers held their breath, waiting for Zahra to rear back or lash out. But she didn't. She lowered her head slightly, her eyes softening, just for a moment. The ground beneath their feet seemed to hum with the weight of something ancient, something profound. Zahra, the untamable, the cursed, the fierce protector of secrets, had allowed him closer than any man before. Rashid's heart beat steady, his pulse in sync with the rhythm of her breathing. He did not reach out to touch her. He simply stood there, waiting. The trust was not in the touch. It was in the act of standing together in that stillness, facing each other with respect and nothing more. The first test was complete. And Zahra had allowed it. For the first time in generations, the curse was not a wall. It was a door, open, but only for those who could understand. The villagers, watching from a distance, felt an unfamiliar sensation, hope. And though they dared not speak it, they wondered if this was the beginning of something that could change the fate of the horse, and the village, forever. As Rashid spent more days with Zahra, gaining her trust with each passing hour, he learned of her tragic past, one that had shaped her into the creature she was. It was a story the villagers rarely spoke of, their voices hushed with reverence and fear. But the village elder, sensing Rashid's sincerity, decided it was time to reveal the truth. The elder's voice was raspy, thick with the weight of years, as he began to recount the legend. "Zahra was once the pride of our people," he said, gazing into the distance, his eyes clouded with the pain of lost memories. "She was a gift from a king, a noble steed given to our leader in a time of peace. The horse was a symbol of power, loyalty, and the strength of the desert tribes. But the peace was not to last. The tribe's leader, a man once revered for his wisdom, was tempted by greed. A foreign king offered him riches and power in exchange for betrayal. The leader, blinded by ambition, agreed to sell out his own people, planning to hand them over to the invaders. Zahra, fiercely loyal to her tribe, overheard the plot. In her own way, she sought to stop the treachery, to protect the land she loved. When the betrayal was revealed, the king who had gifted Zahra cast his curse upon her. "May no man ever tame you," the king declared. "And may you forever guard the land, until someone worthy of your loyalty arises." The curse was both a punishment and a test. Zahra was bound to the land, guarding it from those unworthy of her trust. Only the pure-hearted could ever break the curse. And so, Zahra had remained, waiting, until Rashid came. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Rashid's connection to Zahra deepened. What had started as mere curiosity, a quest to break the curse that had plagued the horse for generations, began to evolve into something much more profound. Rashid did not seek to tame Zahra, he sought to understand her, to earn her trust. And slowly, the barriers between them began to crumble. Each morning, Rashid would visit the stable where Zahra was kept. He would sit quietly on the ground, his presence calm and unassuming, allowing her to approach him in her own time. He did not move to touch her, nor did he speak at first. He simply sat, his breath steady, his mind open. It was an unspoken understanding that grew between them, one not bound by force but by mutual respect. Zahra, at first hesitant, started to show signs of trust. Her once wild eyes, full of suspicion and fear, softened when she saw Rashid. She would stand a little closer each time, as though testing him, gauging whether he was worthy of her confidence. It was as though she, too, had been waiting, for someone who would not try to break her, but rather to see her for what she truly was. Rashid's understanding of the horse deepened with each encounter. He recognized the subtle signs in her body language, the way her ears twitched when she was uncertain, the way she exhaled when she felt safe. He began to speak to her in the language of the desert, the ancient words his mentor had taught him long ago. The words were not commands, but simple phrases of comfort, encouragement, and respect. "I see you, Zahra," he would whisper. "I understand." Zahra responded in kind. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Rashid extended his hand toward her, but he did not reach for her directly. Instead, he waited, letting her come to him. For a moment, Zahra stood still, her nostrils flaring as she took in his scent, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that almost felt like a test. Then, slowly, she lowered her head, her muzzle inching closer to his outstretched hand. The villagers who had been watching from a distance gasped. They had never seen Zahra act so calmly, so willingly. It was a silent moment, but one that spoke volumes. Rashid had done what no one else could. He had earned Zahra's trust. It was a bond forged not through force, but through patience, understanding, and respect. From that day forward, Rashid and Zahra were no longer strangers. They were allies, their bond unspoken but undeniable. And the curse, once seen as an insurmountable obstacle, had begun to unravel, piece by piece. Rashid knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but with Zahra by his side, he felt certain they would face whatever came next, together. The sky darkened as the first gusts of wind swept through the village, carrying with them a chill that cut through the desert heat. A storm was approaching, a violent, unforgiving sandstorm that had begun to form out of nowhere. The villagers, who had long learned to read the desert's moods, knew this storm would be like no other. It was coming fast, and it was coming hard. Panic rippled through the settlement as families rushed to secure their homes, shutters slamming against windows, doors being bolted shut. But the storm wasn't just a threat to the village, it was a threat to everything around them. The very land seemed to tremble under the weight of the coming fury. The elders spoke of ancient storms, ones that had destroyed entire villages in the past, and whispered that this one was unlike any they had seen in their lifetimes. As the wind howled louder, Rashid stood in the middle of the village square, his face set in grim determination. He had heard the elders' warnings, but he had made his decision. He knew what he had to do. He turned to face the stable where Zahra was kept, her dark silhouette visible in the distance against the rapidly darkening sky. The villagers, knowing what was at stake, gathered around, some hesitant, some fearful, and some quietly hopeful. They watched Rashid closely, wondering if he would make the same choice the others had failed to make, the choice to face the storm head-on, guided by Zahra. "She can guide us through," Rashid muttered to himself, his voice steady as the storm began to intensify. The bond between them had grown, and in the silence between the violent winds, Rashid knew what had to be done. Zahra's connection to the desert, to the land itself, was stronger than any of them had realized. If anyone could navigate the storm's wrath, it was her. Without hesitation, Rashid walked toward the stable, his mind made up. Zahra was waiting for him, her dark eyes glimmering with an understanding that only she could offer. She was ready, they were ready. "Zahra," Rashid whispered, stepping into the stable. His hand rested gently on her neck, feeling the steady rhythm of her pulse beneath the surface. The storm was now a roar around them, but Rashid was calm, focused. He knew what the villagers did not. Zahra's curse wasn't meant to bring destruction, it was meant to test the worthy. And to break the curse, one had to trust her completely. Rashid mounted Zahra, his movements fluid and sure. Without a word, they galloped out into the howling winds, the desert shifting beneath them. The villagers watched in awe as the pair disappeared into the storm's fury. For a moment, it seemed as though they were swallowed by the tempest. And then, just as suddenly as the storm had begun, it began to quiet. The wind slowed, the skies cleared, and Zahra led Rashid to a hidden valley, a safe haven, untouched by the storm's rage. The villagers, who had feared for their lives, now saw the truth. Zahra had not been cursed to bring ruin, but to protect. Rashid had made the right choice. And in doing so, he had proved that the curse could be broken, not by force, but by trust. As the storm subsided and the village emerged from the shadows of its fury, the truth became undeniable. Rashid and Zahra had returned, not as victims of the storm, but as its conquerors. The once feared Arabian steed had led them through the chaos, guiding them to safety with a wisdom that no one had understood before. The villagers, who had once whispered of Zahra's curse with fear and superstition, now saw her for what she truly was, a guardian, not a destroyer. The curse was never meant to punish, but to protect. It had been a test, one that only someone who truly understood the heart of Zahra could pass. Rashid had not tamed her, he had listened, trusted, and in turn, had earned her loyalty. The village elder, his face lined with disbelief, approached Rashid and Zahra. "You have done what no one else could," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown us the truth. Zahra is not a curse. She is our protector." Rashid nodded, his gaze fixed on Zahra, who stood by his side, proud and serene. Together, they had broken the curse not through dominance, but through understanding and respect. And so, the village thrived under Zahra's protection, her legend transformed from one of fear to one of hope.